It's 6 o'clock. It's the Primetime Rundown. Let's get things started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode number 44 of the Primetime Rundown, powered by StreamYard, right here on the Eastern Observer, I-95 Sports Network, and Zingo Television, channel 198. And also now available on Apple and Google Podcasts and Spotify. So be sure to check that box and subscribe to our podcast, please. Alongside my co-host, Rob DeLuca, and our special guest, Casey Bryant. Joey, I should say, will be joining us here in a little bit, following the conclusion of his coverage of the St. John-Seton Hall game. I'm Ian Schraier, very excited to be back here with you all, and can't thank you, our viewers, enough for spending your Friday evening here with us. Gentlemen, Rob, Casey, how are we doing? Are you guys getting into the holiday spirit? Christmas only a couple of weeks away. What's going on?
Well, you know, Ian had better days. Unfortunately, today was the day I found out I have tested positive for COVID-19. I do not have any symptoms. I feel completely fine right now. So we're just going to take it day by day. I currently await another test, the regular PCR test result. So we will hope that comes back negative. Other than that, prior to that news, I was having a pretty good week. It was a good week. St. John's was bringing it down a little bit, as they are down on the scoreboard a little bit, but there's plenty of time.
Well, Rob, I sure can say from I can't talk for Casey. Casey will talk in a second, but I'm sure I can say for the two of us that we hope that that the test is in fact negative. I know the rapid test came through positive, but should you have COVID, please be safe and take care. And I can't remember, and we here as the Eastern Observer family care deeply about Rob, and want to see you get better as soon as possible. And I can't remember who it was on Twitter that had said, who came out with the best 4 words I think I've seen in the year 2020 that said, "Stay positive, test negative." So I think that's the way to really look at life right now these days, with the COVID cases skyrocketing. But Rob, we wish you all the best right now, and hope everything, hope the test turns the other way for you. Casey, how are you doing, sir?
Bold of you to assume that I'm wishing well on Rob. I don't know. Maybe I want him to have it. You don't know.
We go back on that.
No, obviously all the best to you, Rob, and obviously safety and good health for your family as well. Otherwise, I'm doing okay. Trying to stay sane. I work in Danbury, Connecticut, which unfortunately cases are rising there too. So, just trying to stay indoors, stay safe, and enjoy a holiday season with my family. I think all of my holiday shopping is done. The packages are slowly starting to come in. I think everyone's taken care of. We'll see if anything gets lost in the mail. Well,
I was going to say at least Amazon is still working. So
right, yeah. So we still got that going for us.
and we only have a few weeks left in 2020. Thankfully, hopefully we can move on and get ready for 2021, and hopefully it's a better year than what the start of the 2020s has done for us here. Fellas, it's been very, very quiet on the hot stove in Major League Baseball. Big surprise, but it's been a very busy week of sports in the metropolitan area. But first, we want to thank Black Cats NYC and promote their new album, Free Cake. Dirty Little Hipster, the song you heard at the top of the show here tonight, is the featured single on that album, and now available for download on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, and Spotify. So please be sure to give that a download. Black Cats NYC, Andrew Giordano, thank you so much for all you do here for the Eastern Observer and the Primetime Rundown. So, gentlemen, let's begin by taking you back to last Sunday. I know we have our shows on Fridays, so we don't get a chance to talk about the week that was in football as early as most people might. But let's take you back to Week 13. And Week 13 was to say the least, I would say very memorable for both the local teams here in the metropolitan area. And while I know Rob is extremely chomping at the bit right now to start talking about the Giants, I think we got to start here.
Jets coming. Carr puts some air under it. Wide open is Ruggs for the touchdown. Miraculous. No, he didn't. Just incredible. This is simple. You're going to stutter.
I think that's the best graphic right now to follow that up with. And I know what was it, a few weeks ago, Rob, that I had my 5 to 10 minute rant, whatever it might have been.
I think that's like a month ago.
I think that game on Sunday really takes it to a whole new level. You would think I'm wearing my Giants gear here tonight, and I know we still have the graphic up. I want to pull that down, but. You see, I'm wearing my Giants sweatshirt. I'm so excited about what's going on with the Giants. But the first thing I want to talk about for some reason is the New York Jets. And words can't describe what happened in I would say 5 minutes. I remember sitting down on my couch to watch the Giant game at 4 o'clock. I turned on Fox, 4:03, whatever time it was. They're getting ready to kick off. And Rob, of all people, texts Joey and I and says, Raiders win it at the buzzer. And I said, you've got to be kidding me, right? There's no way that happened. I turned the game off just after the 2-minute warning after the Jets had gotten the stop on 4th down. So I remember telling my wife, who's a diehard Jets fan, and saying the Jets are, going to win their first football game. And I had to actually turn it back to Red Zone to assure myself of the fact that Rob was in fact lying to me and telling me that the Jets actually lost on the final play of the game. The Raiders get the ball down 28-24, fellas, at their own 39-yard line. No timeouts, 35 seconds left. Fast forward 25 seconds, 10 seconds left in the game. Somehow, Greg Williams decides to employ a cover zero defense on a play that is designed that is a Hail Mary. I mean, there was no way, unless they were going to try to run some sort of hook and ladder to try to, which I think, aside from maybe the Miami Miracle, 2 years ago, how often do we ever see that play work in the National Football League? So Carr was at a position on the field to get the ball down the field enough to throw a Hail Mary to at least try to win the game. But no, the Jets decide to run a cover zero defense. They're blitzing 7 guys, man coverage on the outside, no safeties at the goal line. I know Jet fans are celebrating, guys, and I'm going to get to that. But Rob, let's start with you here. Does this loss just feel like the confirmation of what we're expecting now at this point, to be 0-16?
I think it might, honestly. I was watching this game. I watched this game from start to finish, actually, before I was even able to get to the Giants game. Because just of the situation, I was like, okay, I actually do have to see this play out now. And it looked like the Jets were finally going to not turn a corner, but, finally win that game, take away the 0-16 jokes. And then in literal typical Jets fashion, buzzer beater by Derek Carr. Beautiful play, beautiful throw, easy catch, easy money. And everyone, and I mean everyone at this point, is calling for Adam Gase's head. So naturally, it only made sense for the Jets to fire Greg Williams after the fact. That of everything for the Jets that's gone wrong this season, that play is finally what started getting people fired. That play is why Greg Williams is now unemployed. Somehow, Adam Gase is still here. He's obviously going to ride out the season because the Jets are now obviously tanking. And I think they should get some sort of fine for that, because it doesn't get any clearer at this point. Like, what are we talking about? Like, how do you get burned that badly in the backfield? You don't.
He's calling for fines for them being horrible. I love it.
I'm calling fines for the intentionally throwing games. There's like a betting scandal involved.
Casey, even I'm having trouble containing the laughter, but Rob, I actually saw this on Twitter the other day that, and funny enough, the person who tweeted it was Dan Orlovsky, who's now an analyst for ESPN. And lest we forget, he was the starting quarterback for the 2008 Detroit Lions, the same quarterback that ran out of the back of the end zone for a safety. That was the decisive safety against the Minnesota Vikings that year en route to the Lions going 0-16. So how coincidental is it that Dan Orlovsky, of all people, is telling people on Twitter that this is something that Greg Williams has done in the past? It has worked. Yes, you're taking a huge gamble. I mean, you're hoping that somebody who's blitzing one of those 7 is going to be able to get to the quarterback. In that case, Ruggs had man coverage on the outside. Casey, have you ever seen a play like that, where in a situation where you're expecting a Hail Mary to see a defensive coordinator dial up a cover 0 blitz like that?
I mean, it's bold. It's bold. Don't get me wrong. That is the kind of play where, like, you don't just want to win, you want to embarrass your opponent, but you can't have that strategy if you're the New York Jets. You know, it's funny because I was watching that game with my girlfriend and her family, and they're all Jets fans, and they're 0-11, so they're not passionate right now where, like, they're mad if they lose or anything like that. But they're watching the game and they're like, hey, the Jets might actually get this one. And when that play happened, they weren't angry. They weren't upset. They devolved into giggles. The room was just cackling, howling with laughter for a solid 5 minutes after that play happened, because there was just sheer disbelief in the room that the Jets jetsed that hard. It's peak 2020 Jets. You will not find a funnier moment, because it's not even that one play. It was the buildup. It was the slow escalation. It was like a beautiful crescendo in a Tchaikovsky piece where you have pass interference after bullet pass, where yards after the catch leads to drives down the field. The run defense can't stop a nosebleed. I mean, it was wonderful. It was perfect.
And we want to open up these reactions. We don't want to limit it just to the 3 of us. So we do invite all of our viewers to please drop a comment in the comment box. Rob is entertaining all Jets fans to please drop a comment in the box and to let us know how you felt.
Let me see what they could possibly say to me at this point.
About how you felt about the Jets game last Sunday. What's really bothering me about Jets Nation right now, with respect to the fact that I think there were more fans celebrating the loss, even though Casey, I think you said it, where you said the Jets couldn't have jets themselves more in allowing a touchdown like that to end the game when the game was over. Listen, even as a Giants fan, the last 5 years, we're counting down the days to the draft, and we can't, we're hoping that teams are losing or winning games, and you're hoping the Jacksonville Jaguars aren't going to pull out a win in Minnesota, or whatever the case may be. That the Jets now, or I should say the Jets fan now, is more entertained of the fact of making sure they don't lose out on Trevor Lawrence rather than going 0-16. I can't say that if I was in the shoes of a Jets fan that maybe I wouldn't feel the same way. However, to me, there's just that stigma that always comes with being an 0-16 team. I don't remember the 2017 Browns, I would say, as well as I remember the 08 Lions. One of my best friends is a diehard Lions fan, but to me, it will forever come with that stigma, that history, guys, of being possibly the 3rd team ever. And when you look at the 3 teams that could possibly in the NFL's history have an 0-16 record, could you find 3 more snake-bitten franchises? The Lions, the Browns, and the Jets. So, do you agree with do you guys agree with how the Jet fan base feels that we should be tanking for Trevor Lawrence? Who cares if they won or lost?
I mean, look, Jets fans are in a weird place right now. Like, they knew they weren't going to be good, but I don't think they expected this. This isn't even quality football right now. Like, everyone makes the joke that, like, oh, yeah, Alabama could beat these guys. I'm always like, no. Literally, even the worst teams would still beat Alabama by 30, if not more. With this Jets team, I mean, great. Look, it's an exhibition game, so they probably still would win by at least 20. But, like, if it was a game that mattered, I don't know. It's tough to say. But, no, absolutely. At this point, Jets fans should be all aboard the Lawrence train. But they do got to worry because Jacksonville Jaguars are right there, and they are very much in need of a quarterback too. So it's going to be tight.
But Casey, do you think that even if they went 1-15 and still lost out on Trevor Lawrence, do you think that Jet fans would be accepting? And I don't want to say that this is in a bad way, but do you think that they would be accepting of the fact that their team would be 1-15 and still missed out on Trevor Lawrence? That 0-16 is actually acceptable?
I don't even know what the worst possible outcome is for the Jets, because to be honest, I don't know if Trevor Lawrence is the answer. You know, as great as it would be to say that you got the first overall pick, you just spent the what was it, the fourth overall pick not 2 years ago?
The third on Sam Darnold, yeah.
Third overall, yeah. And that was going to be your savior. The problem, I don't think, is with Sam Darnold. I still maintain that it's more on the coaching staff and on the general manager and the owner for not surrounding him with any weapons whatsoever. So getting the number one overall pick and spending it on another quarterback seems like a step backward from an organization. But I understand that, you know, especially in the city of New York, people want immediate results. They want changes from the top down. We see this in every sport and every franchise across the entire sporting landscape. If something isn't working, they want the top head gone. And in this case, it happens to be Sam Darnold. And I think that's what makes this potentially even more embarrassing than the Browns or the Lions. The Lions quarterback was John Kitna. No one had any pretense of John Kitna being the future of the franchise. The Cleveland Browns are the Cleveland Browns. They haven't been good in 20 years, and it was only just that's what led to Baker. You know, so no one was pretending that franchise was going to do anything. The Jets have pretended. The Jets have pretended they're going to be good. You know, they hired Adam Gase, and he was going to be the offensive guru. They drafted Sam Darnold. He was going to be the next leader of the franchise. That is all blown up in their faces. I think that's what makes this more embarrassing.
Coming into the game, I felt that this game against the Raiders, and I think the Raiders are one of the most overrated teams in the AFC right now, and it didn't help their case that Josh Jacobs was hurt, but I thought coming in that they were one of the most overrated teams in the AFC, and it showed on the field the week before, just to put up a stinker of a performance like they did in Atlanta against an Atlanta defense that has nothing going for it, and to just get blown out as a potential playoff team right now. And then you should have lost to the Jets. So what does that say for the state of the Raiders right now? But right now the Jets are 0-12, and their final four games are not forgiving. They're at Seattle. We know the loss at Seattle's coming off and how they need to try to keep pace right now with the Rams in the division. Then they've got the Rams. Then they're in LA to play the Rams. And then their final home game, week 16 against the Browns. So we know the Browns right now are playing for a division title. And what would it be like come week 17, the Jets are 0-15, and Bill Belichick has a chance at Foxborough to stick it to the same team that 20 years ago he turned around and said, no, I don't want to be the head coach of your franchise. So an interesting month, to say the least, to come for the New York Jets. But my last question to you guys regarding the Jets has to be, and I feel like we have this conversation every few weeks, but again, it bears reiterating, is that how is Adam Gase, and maybe at 0-12, you could say to yourself, listen, it's 0-12. Let's play out the season, and we'll fire them when we're 0-16. This team, you're right, Casey, lacks weapons. They have failed to put a successful team around Sam Darnold. So I myself have not given up on Sam yet. Granted, if the Jets aren't winning, the first player you're going to blame, besides blaming the general manager, is the starting quarterback. We've done it as Giants fans with Daniel Jones already. I'll be the first to admit it. So for a team that needs such a morale booster, why, guys, is Adam Gase still there?
I think that's just it. You know, it's too late. They should have done it weeks ago, and they didn't do it. So at this point, it's too late. And I think that's literally the reason they're running on, that they're just going to play out the season. And then when the final buzzer goes off, I don't think it'll even be a day before we hear Adam Gase is no longer going to be the coach.
Casey.
I think that with the New York Jets, them not firing him midseason is such a perplexing move, because honestly, I think that allows this toxic culture that exists within the Jets to fester and spread. You know, you're now allowing the tumor to kind of metastasize all over your body. What was it? Was it 2 years ago, before they brought in Gase, they had Greg Williams as their interim head coach, yeah? And they had
between Todd Bowles and
Yeah, and what happened? That you saw an immediate turnaround in their play to where they went from I forget the specific number in front of me, but they went something like 4-3 down the stretch or 5-3. They started winning games and they turned it around. They played physical. They had a bit more spirit, and because they saw that ownership recognized a problem and sent a message. In this particular season, no one's recognizing anything. They're just allowing everything to keep going, and we'll fix it. It's like being on a bad movie set, and the director just goes, we'll fix it in post. It's no big deal. No matter. Keep going. There's no recognition. There's no accountability. And I think that you now, instead of having perhaps a last good 5 weeks to where you feel like, all right, maybe there's something here to this team. Now you're just going into the offseason with a complete sour mood. No one in the locker room is happy, and they can't wait to leave. Now, instead of being a destination where you can recognize, hey, something might be changing, now you're in a loser's culture. And that's what the Jets have found themselves in for years. Don't get me wrong, but they missed an opportunity by firing Gase in week 7.
I think that was well said by both of you, that and Casey, to your point about wanting to be a destination, and with all the money that the Jets are going to have coming off the books, even if you do make a head coaching change, and it appears that that the Johnson family is very much enamored right now with Adam Gase, and I'm still wondering how, but is that how are you going to entertain free agents to want to come play for the Jets? Now, if you have the number 1 pick, how much weight gets put on the fact that you're going to have Trevor Lawrence? You're going to have this stud quarterback coming out of Clemson. Let's look at the quarterbacks that have been taken recently in the NFL draft that have evolved into superstars. Patrick Mahomes was not drafted in the top 5 of the first round. The Ravens traded back up into the first round to grab Lamar Jackson. Russell Wilson was drafted in the 3rd round. So before we start putting Trevor Lawrence on this pedestal as the next savior of the Jets, because we all did it for Sam Darnold, we just need to take a step back and find out where the Jets need to turn to fix these problems, because they've started to salvage that offensive line a bit with Becton, but there's a lot more building to go. All right, guys, let's move over to the team now in New York that has actually won 4 games in a row. And listen, week upon week, I choose not to wear any of my team's apparel when I'm on the show. I don't know why I don't do it. I just don't. I don't wear Mets stuff. I don't wear Rangers stuff. I don't wear Giants stuff. But look, beam me up, Scotty, right now. This Giants team has won 4 in a row. They were 9-point underdogs. Colt McCoy was the starting quarterback for the New York Football Giants last Sunday, and the Giants came out and played their best game, defensively at least, of the season. I think I could speak for most Giant fans, and Rob, I'm sure, has a few minutes, if you will allow Rob to have a few minutes of your time as well, to tell you that at 3-0, and remember, in the first half, the Giants' only opportunity to really score any points was on their first offensive possession of the game, where they were in the red zone, they were in field goal range, and Colt McCoy throws that pass that gets tipped and intercepted, and the Giants don't have a single scoring threat the rest of the way. So as Giant fans, you're just waiting with Colt McCoy as the starting quarterback. You're just waiting for something in this game to fall apart, for Russell Wilson to become Russell Wilson, and just waiting for this game to just get, taken right out of the claws of a possible, not even so much as trying to get a win out of the game. It was more, let's just try to keep the game close and keep it interesting, and have some positives to take away from it. But the Giants, they held Russell Wilson to 263 yards passing, 65 yards rushing, only 1 touchdown. They sacked Russell Wilson 5 times. 5 times. That's unbelievable that the Giants, who for years have always struggled against mobile quarterbacks, found a way with Patrick Graham's defense to contain a mobile quarterback. And now they're going to have that same kind of challenge this week, because Arizona presents the same kind of challenge that Seattle did. They have a mobile quarterback. They have a number 1 wide receiver that DeAndre Hopkins that James Bradbury is going to have to try to lock down. They have a defense right now that's struggling. But the difference is that Arizona has lost 4 of their last 5. And granted, they probably should have lost 5 in a row if not for the Hail Mary. So, Rob, I'm going to turn the podium over to you, sir. What more can be said, maybe that I haven't said already, about the job that Joe Judge and Patrick Graham have done over these last 4 weeks?
This is what we as Giants fans have been waiting for 5 years. A competent head coach. And yes, I am saying that after only 14 games, 12 games, 14 weeks. Yeah, I'm saying it. It's simple as that. Like this, that you could feel the culture is changing. These players like Joe Judge. People were worried that Joe Judge wasn't going to be the right guy. His attitude isn't right. And let me tell you something else. It seems like firing Colombo was arguably the best move that he's made this year, because the improvement I have seen from the offensive line in just the 2 games since Dave DiGiulio took over is second to none. It's just incredible how much more time Jones and McCoy have had in the pocket, especially for someone like McCoy, who is not that mobile. So it's even better. But if I really want to give credit somewhere, stop sleeping on the New York Giants defense. If this game did not prove to you that the Giants have a way better defense than the numbers may say, I don't know what to tell you. They're already ranked in the top 10, and they just shut down one of the best quarterbacks in the league. What more in his stadium, no less? So what more do you need to not say this defense is going to be something special, especially when everything comes full circle, everyone's healthy, everyone's not injured, and especially if this team ends up winning the NFC East and hosting a playoff game.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second, but Rob, to your point about where the defense stands, they are now 10th. They're a top 10 defense, statistically at least right now, in the NFL. They're 4th in the NFL against the run and 9th in scoring in points allowed. Casey, I think also, if you want to give credit, I think we've got to give credit to someone that Rob has vehemently on numerous occasions said he can't wait to get rid of, and that's Dave Gettleman.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
What can we say about a guy like Gettleman, who has easily put together the Giants' best draft class, probably since Jerry Reese's first draft class, when he drafted guys like Kenny Phillips and Matthias Kiwanuka. So how much credit has to go at this point, Casey, to Dave Gettleman and this winning streak that they have right now?
Well, I'm not ready to throw a parade for him yet, but this is certainly where, you can start to see the building blocks for this organization, right? Because general managing, especially in football, it takes time. You have to be able to build an organization. That's the difference between the Jets and the Giants. The Jets have had, 9 years since their last good season to build something, and they haven't been able to do it. The Giants, meanwhile, are slowly starting to come back into relevance, especially because of some of the offseason acquisitions that they made. Ryan, Bradbury, Martinez. Those 3 guys have completely revolutionized the defense, especially Blake Martinez. I love the way that he plays.
And Jabril Peppers last year as well.
And Jabril Peppers, yes. People killed the OBJ to Jabril Peppers trade, and whatever side of that argument you want to choose to fall on, the joys of hindsight have shown that OBJ hasn't played this year because he tore his ACL, and even last year wasn't the same Odell Beckham that he was in New York because they had to spread the ball around, and the Browns just weren't very good either. Now you have an organization, you brought in Jabril Peppers because of that. You completely revamped the secondary, which was a big problem in years past. So the defense was certainly carrying the team. I tell you, I was sending memes in the group chat that Rob and I have with some of our college friends when the Giants were down 5-0 at halftime. I had a clip of Stephen A. of him yelling 0 points, 0. I said that all right, this is going to be one of those games where the defense shows up and the offense stutters because Colt McCoy is under center. All right, it's one of those games, whatever. You can chalk it up as an L. No, they surprised because they gave such a strong effort, and it's mostly because of another acquisition, Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams was a monster in that game against Seattle. He was great.
Casey, if I may interrupt just a sec. Yeah. The way the relationship of Giants fans and Leonard Williams, the way that has gone a literal 180. Yeah. They went from cut this man to bench this man to give this man an full-on extension.
A career high, guys. A career high 8.5 sacks with 4 games left to go. Leonard Williams looking very much like the player that the Jets thought that they had drafted a few years ago out of USC. And to belabor on the point about Gettleman, look at the draft class this past year.
Look at
Andrew Thomas, we were all ready to write him off already as a left tackle. He's starting to find his groove. I remember talking to one of my friends and criticizing the draft pick of Matt Pert, who came out of an abysmal football program at UConn, and he has slid into that starting right tackle spot. Their 4th round pick, Shane Lemieux, the guard out of Oregon, is now their starting left guard. So, listen, I agree with you, Casey, that we shouldn't be throwing Dave Gettleman a parade yet. But to what you have said, Rob, I think Dave Gettleman after this year has earned at least another year.
I don't know if we're close. I will say we're close. Dave Gettleman very close to earning another year. However, I don't think the decision should come from the Maras. I believe the decision should be made by one person, and that is Joe Judge. Joe Judge is the coach of the New York Giants' future, and he should get to pick the GM he wants to work with. Someone that will work well with him.
Can I tell you, there's such, as someone who watches all of the post games too for both the Jets and the Giants. The Jets post game, by the way, is the funniest unscripted comedy on television.
I miss Ray Lucas so bad.
Ray Lucas and oh god, when Jenk was on there, Chris Jenkins, when he was on the post game, when Mike Westhoff was on the post game. I've been watching the post game back when Adam Shine was one of their post game guys.
Yep.
For years now, SNY has had the best post game show.
By far.
And you watch the coaches and the way that they're scrutinized in the New York. They're both in the same market, same stadium, New York media. And granted, it's different beats, but it's the same tone. It's the same pool that you're swimming in. And when Joe Judge is asked a question, he gives a very blunt answer, very quick, very direct. People are accepting of his answer, and they move on. When Adam Gase is on the stand, you would think it's the end of a Law and Order episode, and Jack McCoy is giving him a cross interrogation. There was one question. Did you see the clip of what Sam Darnold was asked at the end of last game?
No, I did not.
Sam Darnold was asked by a reporter. This is a direct quote. He goes, Sam, I know you're probably not going to answer this, but with a lousy play call at the end of the game, does that piss you off? Watching, your coaching staff, piss away a game like that? Like, first off, that's just a cruel question to ask. And then Sam is like, yeah, we got to be better. It is what it is. You're right.
That's what a professional should do.
Yeah, he shrugs it off. But can you imagine that question being asked in a Giants locker room? It's unfathomable. There's so much more respect that goes with the Giants organization than with the Jets.
And I think Joe Judge learned that as much as we want to say that the man cheated, he learned a lot of that from Bill Belichick. And that's how Bill Belichick has always approached the media. He's been very stoic, to say the least, and very, very one-worded. But you got to appreciate the way Joe Judge is with the media. He's straight. He's to the point. He doesn't leave a lot of questions open-ended, and he's doing what a leader should do. And that's not what we saw from Pat Shurmur and Ben McAdoo. When things got rough, they started to pass the blame and say, we need this guy off the team, or we need this. They couldn't build culture. And that's what it appears Joe Judge is doing. He's building culture, and he's building a very important word when it comes to establishing a winner: accountability. And that's even more important. So as I had said a few minutes ago, guys, is that the Giants do have the Arizona Cardinals coming in. The Cardinals are 6-6, a little bit of the ways off from where they were only a few weeks ago. They've lost 4 of their last 5. In theory, they probably should have lost their last 5 in a row, if not for the Hail Mary game against that DeAndre Hopkins had caught against Buffalo. So, Rob, let's start with you. I want to get your predictions on your thoughts this weekend, Giants, Arizona.
This is a huge game for both sides. Both sides need this W in the worst way possible. I think it is going to be an absolute dogfight from start to finish. Kyler Murray, you got a young quarterback coming in. As you said, Ian, aside from the Hail Mary game, which impressive as it was, this Cardinals are definitely on a downslide right now, while the Giants are definitely getting hot. So the Giants need to ride that momentum. It is unfortunate that there are still no fans allowed, because this is a game where fan energy could really play an advantage. So it's gonna just be a battle of the best at this point, and it's still a question as to who will be under center for the New York Giants. It's starting to look like it will be Daniel Jones, but there's still 2 whole days to go, so we will have to wait and see.
Oh, Rob, the Giants play 3 of their final 4 games at home, including the next 2, Arizona and Cleveland. Casey, Does the weather report right now for the metropolitan area does not look good for Sunday? It looks like it's going to be in the 40s. There might even be some rain. So do you feel, and I don't want to get your prediction on the game, but do you feel that perhaps with the way the momentum is carrying right now with the Giants and playing in a stadium that they know and is their home stadium and they know how to play in the cold weather, where Arizona plays in the 95-degree heat in a domed stadium, do you feel that gives an advantage to the Giants for Sunday?
I think that the elements are more a factor this year than any other because, in years past, if you're playing in the cold, you can still get amped up for the game by virtue of the crowd noise. I always think back to playoff games in Lambeau. Even if you were freezing your tail off and the snow is driving and your breath is visible, you would still be able to get fired up by the fact that you're playing in front of 100,000 screaming fans and you get amped up. With an empty stadium with just piped in crowd noise, you have to rely on your own mental strength in order to overcome that. You're not going to feed off of anyone else. It's got to all come from you. So yeah, I do think the Giants, at least in that particular respect, have the advantage. But with that being said, the fact that Daniel Jones is still questionable and the fact that Blake Martinez is also questionable for the upcoming game, that would be a huge loss, especially in containing Kyler Murray to within the pocket. They were able to handle Russell Wilson. Can they handle the Russell Wilson Jr. out there in Arizona? It's going to be a big test for that defense.
It's a huge game, and we're going to get into the Washington-Pittsburgh. It makes it even a bigger game because Washington pulled off the upset of upsets this weekend, albeit against and I see Rob clenching his teeth, and I know he can't wait to dive into Pittsburgh, but we are just past 6:31, so I wanted to make sure we get to our 6:31 sports update, and that being said, with the Giants winning 4 in a row and being in the lead in the division in the NFC East, it starts to, for the past couple of weeks, I've been wondering when are the Giants, if they keep winning games, are they going to start to get that look at a flex possibility? And when I said, well, they're not going to flex this past Sunday night, but week 14, it's the Cowboys and the 49ers. And albeit that would in the 1990s, that or even so much as 5 years ago with Romo and Alex Smith, that might have drawn a lot of fans. And obviously the fan bases are huge for both sides. But I said 9-3 Browns, NFC East leading Giants. Maybe there's a possibility of a flex, and perhaps NBC was listening because the Giants-Browns Sunday night game the original 1:00 game slated for CBS in Week 15 has now been moved to a Sunday night game between the Giants and the Browns. 2020 at its finest, the Browns and Giants on Sunday Night Football. It will actually be the Giants' first Sunday Night Football game since in about a year and a half, when in September of 2018 they had lost that game and put up a pitiful offensive performance against Dallas, with the exception of Saquon Barkley. So a lot to look forward to, Giant fans, these next 4 weeks. It's not going to be an easy stretch run, but we're going to get there momentarily, and we're going to break it all down for you right here on the Eastern Observer. Guys, let's talk a little Washington here, and by and way, we're also going to talk Steelers. So I'm going to let Rob grind his gears here for a second. Rob, I know you've been waiting to say it, but are the Steelers the most fake 11-0 team you've ever seen?
Ha! I was right. Knew it. I told you all for 3 weeks this team was not for real. And that game proved it. How can an undefeated football team at home with people in the stands lose to a team with no name and a 4-7 record? Where do you go wrong in allowing this football team, literally football team, to defeat you when you have managed to find ways to win games all season long that you had no business winning anyway? It's mind-boggling. It's irritating as a Giants fan personally, because this, in my mind, now pushes the Washington football team as the odds-on favorite to take the NFC East, because they have a far easier schedule than the Giants do. So the fact that that game was won by Washington, I mean, hey, look, good for them. Good for Washington. Hard-earned victory. Alex Smith, phenomenal game. They did what they had to do. Ron Rivera figuring it out. like he always seems to do at the right moments. And now the NFC East is tied as opposed to the Giants having sole possession, which, again, as I said, they really need because their schedule is not a friendly, while Washington's, I would say, is average.
Well, the Giants' remaining schedule, they're home for Arizona, home for Cleveland. Three playoff teams in a row: Arizona, Cleveland, Baltimore, and Dallas. But I wouldn't just underestimate yet, Rob, Washington's schedule. Yes, by percentage points of strength of schedule, it is easier. They've got to go to San Francisco, where right now they are actually a 3.5-point underdog. I don't know how that's possible. And then they're home for Seattle and Carolina, and we know where Seattle stands. And for Carolina, Teddy Bridgewater has quietly had a very good season for the Panthers without Christian McCaffrey. Casey, 9 of the first 12 games for the Steelers have come against under 500 teams. And in the 3 games that didn't come against teams that were under 500, those games, they narrowly skated by Tennessee and Baltimore twice. And one of those games was with RG3. 3 of their final 4 games come against playoff teams: Buffalo this weekend on Sunday Night Football, Indianapolis, Cleveland, and then Cincinnati has not been an easy team to get by. So could we very well, Casey, see the Steelers get dethroned from that number 1 seed in the AFC?
It's entirely possible. You can never say never in the NFL, especially since everything is so bunched up at the top. I tell you, what's going to be a big deciding factor for Pittsburgh is the fact that all of the rest of their games are going to be in cold weather environments. You know, they don't get the luxury of going back to Jacksonville again. You know, they don't get to go down south to Tennessee. They're going to be playing in cold weather: Buffalo, Cleveland, Cincinnati. And one thing that was really prevalent and surprising, this is where it gets back to the cold being a factor and having to psych yourself up for it. Did you see how many drops there were? Like catches, especially Washington. The receiver Washington, or excuse me,
Washington. Yep.
Yeah. And like for the Pittsburgh, there were so many easy catches that hit them in the hands. And as soon as it's done, it's almost as if they're frozen solid.
I can't remember how many Eric Ebron dropped. I mean, he had quite a few.
Yeah, he had a few, and Deontay Johnson had a few. It was really surprising, and you need every catch that you can get, especially the easy ones, when you have no running game. And neither team in that game had a running game. Gibson was gone after the 3rd snap of the game for the Washington football team. The Steelers are without James Conner. They had nothing going for them. So it was a battle of the quarterbacks and the receiving core, and which defense was going to allow big gains. And I was genuinely surprised that Pittsburgh wasn't able to utilize their weapons. None of the star players were really the deciding factor in that game. If you look at the receiving yardage for either team, you know, Chase Claypool is a great receiver, but he only had 2 receptions. Juju Smith-Schuster only had 28 yards through the entire game. Meanwhile, for Washington, Terry McLaurin had like 14 yards for the whole game. It really was.
Logan Thomas was the star of that game for Washington, but and I think you touched on it as well there, Casey, where Juju Smith-Schuster, I don't understand, and it might be because of how deep the Steelers are with Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster and Eric Ebron and James Washington, and you go down the list, they're so deep at wide receiver that perhaps they don't need to target Juju Smith-Schuster as much as they have, but it feels in a way that Juju has been demoted in some ways at this point to like a number 3 wide receiver.
Yeah, and I think it might have been Collinsworth when he was breaking it down, whoever the color commentator was for that game against Washington. He was saying that Juju Smith-Schuster is the kind of wide receiver where you can't pay attention to his yardage till the end of the game because they go 2 quarters without a catch and then explode in the 4th. And as he said that, Juju caught like 2 passes real quick. And as a fan, I'm sitting there thinking, all right, here it comes. Juju's about to take over the 4th quarter. They're going to look for him because they've been spreading the ball to Washington and Johnson so much. And it never came. They kept looking for him for these quick slants over the middle or these button hook routes for like 7 yards, 8 yards, 5 yards, 4 yards. There was never the deep ball threat for Juju. And I think that's just because Washington had their number downfield. So if they're going to adjust and really make a statement, they A, have to balance their run game, and B, spread the ball better to their receivers, and C, make sure those receivers, use their hands and catch the ball. Difficult concept.
Well, watch out, Pittsburgh, because Kansas City right now is tied with you atop the AFC for the best record in the National Football League with one loss, and Pittsburgh only leads that category on tiebreakers right now. And with the way these two teams are trending in different directions, we very well could see Kansas City, if not Buffalo, in a short time top Pittsburgh, and see Pittsburgh playing in a wild card game the first weekend in January. Excuse me, the second weekend in January. Guys, we spoke a little bit about Washington. We spoke a little bit about the Giants. Let's break down the NFC East, guys. And I already spoke, and I'll reiterate it again in regards to the remaining schedules. Rob had alluded to the fact that Washington, at least in terms of the two-team race right now, that the NFC East has the easier schedule between them and the Giants. The Eagles have made an announcement that they're now going to turn to Jalen Hurts, their draft pick from this past year, that Carson Wentz is now going to be on the bench. Dallas right now, the furthest team back, they're actually 2 full games right now behind the Washington football team and the Giants, but Washington has the win on Thanksgiving, where the Giants lost their game, a 37-34 decision earlier this season to the Cowboys. So if the two teams ended up tied, the Giants would lose that tiebreaker. But right now, it does appear, gentlemen, to be a 2-team race. So, Casey, let's start with you this time. I really want to get your thoughts on who do you see coming out of the NFC East, and I don't want to count them out yet. Are Philly and Dallas really out of it?
I would say, yeah. I would say if you watch the Dallas Cowboys play, do you see them as a legit threat?
No, I don't, but I wanted to get your thoughts.
When you see the Dallas Cowboys, they're not a legit threat. I mean, I'm surprised at how, even with Andy Dalton as their starting quarterback, it's not like they got, me as their quarterback who can't throw a football to save their life. They got Andy Dalton was a starting quarterback for like 7 years in the NFL, and they look completely toothless. In their offensive attack. Philadelphia, meanwhile, Carson Wentz, again, as recently as last year, was a fine starting quarterback in the NFL who has completely forgotten how to play the sport. It really and Doug Peterson now deserves a little bit of flack for not being able to rectify the situation with his quarterback. Because whether it's Jalen Hurts or Carson Wentz under center, the Eagles have not looked the same offensively. So for the East, I think, honestly, it may come down to a tiebreaker in terms of the division. And if that's the case, the Giants will win because the Giants have beaten the football team twice. So I really think that, honestly, they could both end up, I'll say they both end up at either 7-9 or 8-8, and the Giants will have the advantage in that case. So if only by virtue of technicality, I don't see, this is the Giants' division to lose.
Rob, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, Casey's not wrong. The tiebreaker is so huge for the New York Giants because they have it. They beat them 2 times, fair and square, and got to be fair and square. But it could very much. All the Giants have to do is win. They control their own destiny at this point. All the Giants have to focus on is themselves because they have the tiebreaker. And yet, Casey's right. Dallas is dead. The only reason Philly might not be dead is because of that tie against the Bengals. It creates an issue because they could win out, go 7-8-1, and that's better than 7-9. So that could cause an issue. However, I do believe turning to Jalen Hurts is the right move against the New Orleans Saints. I'm not sure that's going to make much of a difference who is under center there for Philly. I think the Saints are 10-2. The Saints are 10-2 for a good reason. They're a very, very, very good football team. They are more than likely going to manhandle them, and obviously that's going to be fun to watch. It's not going to be a game I'm going to be focused on, but it's certainly going to be a game a result that I'm going to love seeing. But on top of that, I do believe that Casey makes a point because, and yes, I know the strength of schedule, it's all numbers, but it's scary. If it takes one slip up from the Giants for Washington to pass them, it takes one wrong move. They have to play Giants football for the rest of the season, which in the last month has actually been some pretty damn good football.
Yeah, and they control their own destiny. They win out, and go 9-7. Even if they finish tied, as Casey had mentioned, they would have the tiebreaker. But I mean, what more could you want than having, even without a crowd? And I wish I could say I'd be going to games too, but 3 of their final 4 games will be at MetLife Stadium. So the Giants control their own destiny, fellas. Let's wrap up the football portion of our conversation here with the game last night between the Rams, who just manhandled the New England Patriots, who desperately needed a win to stay in the playoff conversation. Rams put up a 24-3 victory over New England at SoFi Stadium last night. Just completely dominated the run game. Cam Akers, we had known about him in the past, but welcome to the NFL, kid. 29 carries for $171. And the defense did the rest. It was 10-0, and the interception, I should say, even though I really don't want to blame it on Goff, the interception that led to what felt to one of 4 red zone opportunities for the New England Patriots, resulted in a pick 6 that made it 17-0. And at that point at the half, the game was pretty much on ice, to the point that at 24-3 in the fourth quarter, Cam Newton was benched for Jarrett Stidham. In a game that was so important, and we've seen Bill Belichick coach in these type of games before, guys. But are we surprised a little bit about how the result went, or was this to be expected?
I don't know. I mean, look, I knew the Rams were going to win the game. That was an easy call. It was in LA. I mean, there's no fans. I guess it doesn't matter that much. But they've been playing on that turf all year, so there's a little bit of an advantage. So, I mean, I didn't expect the Patriots to get completely blown out. I will say that. I did not expect them to only score 3 points. Especially, I mean, look, the Rams have a very good defense, and the Patriots have a lot of opt-outs, so it certainly was a disadvantage. And we saw it when the Giants played the Rams, that it's usually a very low-scoring game. This game only had 27 points, and I just feel that it's always hard to count out Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
At 6-7, time is really running out here. I mean, look, the wild card race, even the division, but that's thinning. That's thinning, especially if Buffalo picks up a win this weekend. That's very much, I think it'd be dead at that point if Buffalo picks it up. At least for New England, it would be dead.
Rob, New England now is 2.5 games out of a play. Not even so. We're not even thinking so much division here. They're 2.5 games out of the number 7 seed in the AFC playoff picture, with 3 games left to play, and those 3 final games are one of them includes a game against Buffalo. So
it's all. I believe it's all division for them now, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
We very well could see the New England Patriots miss the playoffs for the first time since 2008, which we remember as the year that Tom Brady went down and Matt Castle earned himself $20 million to become the next starting quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because it's hard to compare to 2008, because to be fair, that team still went 11-5. How they missed the playoffs that year is a phenomenon no one can explain. Because you don't often hear going 11-5 and missing the playoffs. It was just like, I believe, 6 or 7 years ago, the Giants went 10-6 and they missed the playoffs. Those are rare occurrences when you have a record that good that you don't make it. So the team was good, but this Patriots team, they're pretty much paced to be average. They're just an average team this year. Look, like I said, they had a lot of opt-outs. So when everyone comes back next year, depending on who Bill Belichick decides to put under center, they very well could find themselves right back in the playoffs next season. It's hard to say.
Casey, it feels like every week we're having the same discussion about the NFC West, and only a few weeks ago we had the same conversation, and we were still putting the Seahawks at the top and talking about the Arizona Cardinals as a contender in that division. Did we unfairly, to a certain degree, maybe because of Goff's inconsistency since the Super Bowl, write off the Rams?
I don't think it was unwarranted, because that is exactly as you said. He's been inconsistent. You never know what Jared Goff is going to show up to any given game. This game could have very easily been flipped. The reason why it wasn't is because the Rams defense is one of the best pass defenses in the league, and they were going up against a shell-shocked quarterback in Cam Newton, who hasn't ever been able to get his footing in New England. And then eventually they're dealing with Stidham. And who couldn't stop Stidham? the Patriots just aren't the same team. They're in a retooling period without Tom Brady. They're in that adjustment period. And I feel bad that the Cam Newton experiment hasn't worked out because I feel like Cam Newton could, in the right system, still be an effective quarterback. It just isn't in New England, clearly. But it's Jared Goff, more to your point, though, it's a complete mystery which one is going to show up because there are weeks where he looks like the best quarterback in the NFL, and there are weeks where you wonder how he has an NFL job, and there really isn't a whole lot of in between. And for most of last year, or the year that he was in the Super Bowl, it was all this end of the spectrum. We've seen more of the kind of this spectrum this year. Even though they're 9-4, you still have a lot of questions about Jared Goff. So I'm not ready to, again, same thing I said about Dave Gettleman. I'm not ready to throw the celebration. Jared Goff is back. He's a leader.
Yeah, look, Casey, I don't think I'm asking you to throw a celebration party for Jared Goff, but I think as looking at the NFC West and seeing the talent that's within that division, and who knows where the 49ers would be if they didn't have the injuries to Garoppolo and Kittle, I think he deserves a little praise for where the Rams are right now. Sure,
absolutely. He's been, at the very least, he's emerged as a leader. You know, that's something that his rookie year was the year that he was on Hard Knocks on HBO.
Yep.
And when you watched him as a person, you were like, this guy is going to be the leader of the franchise. He's kind of spacey. He doesn't know what direction the sun rises. Like, he's a really weird kind of guy, but he's matured. And so whether he's on this end of the spectrum or this end of the spectrum, he's owned it. And he acknowledges this is his team. He's grabbed it by the range. And a lot of that also is credit to Sean McVay, because McVay is a confidence instiller. I'm on the couch and I'm fired up every time I hear him speak. I'm like, yes, I will run through a wall for Sean McVay. That's the kind of, again, that's culture. That it's so important in football.
You had mentioned that the quarterback situation right now has been troubling for New England, and their last 3 weeks are only averaging 230 yards of total offense. Granted, in those 3 games, they're 2-1, but that's not something I would want to be writing home about or feel confident going into a playoff game. Look, fellas, we know that Tom Brady was not returning in 2020 to the New England Patriots. As such, he signed his contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But can we say, and let's look back 13 weeks here, guys. Can we say that this was to be expected? That we expected a Bill Belichick / Josh McDaniels run offense to be acting in the way that it has been at this point of the season, that they're not in the discussion for the AFC East? Can we say we expected that after they signed Cam Newton?
It's tough. Again, it seemed interesting signing Cam Newton because it was like Tom Brady's gone. So it's like, is the rebuild finally starting? And then you have all those opt-outs because of COVID. So it's like, okay, this is literally the time for the rebuild to start. And Bill Belichick's obviously still going to be there. So with him, it won't last long either. So it was kind of confusing at the time, but again, I go back to the opt-outs. They were just too much, and it's gonna knock them out. It's gonna keep them from the playoffs. I think even if they win out, they're not gonna get. It's very possible the Patriots do win out because it's division play. Anything's possible. They very easily could be 9-7. However, I don't think they're gonna get the outer help that they require to get in. So therefore, they would miss. So other than that, I think I wouldn't. I believe the question should be, should Cam Newton get another year, another shot? Because he hasn't looked, like his elite self since the injury. But I don't think he's been terrible either. So it's like...
Rob, when you look at Cam's passing numbers, they aren't anything pretty. Even if you look back to last week's game against the Chargers, that most of their scoring came as a result of their defense and their special teams as well.
Yeah. So, exactly. So it's not like he's been special, but if he stays the same price and you don't find a better quarterback out there, I mean, why not?
Casey, your take.
Cam Newton, I was really excited for him in the Patriots because it was clear that he was going to be extremely motivated for this year. And the Patriots love these reclamation projects, right? They love trying to take guys that are maybe on the bargain bin who were once elite talents and trying to turn them into something, get them back to their former glory. They did that with Chad Ochocinco. They did that with Michael Floyd. They did that with Josh Gordon. They did that with Antonio Brown, and they did it with Cam Newton. All of these guys that kind of came with either lackluster skill set compared to the past or baggage, or in most of those cases, both. And in all of them, they haven't really panned out the way that the Patriots anticipated. I thought that Cam was going to be the exception to that rule. I really thought that Cam had something left in the tank because of just the laser show that he put on in Carolina in his prime. And I do think that quarterbacks in general, there's a longevity to the position. You're able to hold on for long enough. I'm kind of surprised and disappointed that it hasn't worked out the way it has. I do think he'll get another gig somewhere, if only just because when you look around the NFL, there's always a need for a quarterback or a backup quarterback. Jameis Winston got a job after throwing 35 million picks. Anyone can get a job in this league. Blaine Gabbert was still getting snaps in the NFL as recently as last year.
Geno Smith is the backup quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks.
Exactly, so. and Geno Smith must have incriminating photos of Roger Goodell. So he will land somewhere. I'm disappointed it's not with New England, but I could see him thriving in a position. If Drew Brees is out for the long term, I could see maybe New Orleans taking a look at him and running the same kind of system with Taysom Hill as they do with Cam Newton. I could see if Tom Brady were to up and retire at the end of this year, I could see Tampa Bay taking a shot at him.
Casey, I want to follow up on that. I thought the broadcast last night, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman had mentioned something very, very interesting. They said that since 2010, guys, that only since 2010, we're talking 10 years, only 2 drafted wide receivers by the New England Patriots still remain in the league. And those 2 drafted wide receivers came out of their 2018 and 2019 draft classes. So we know, aside from a player like a Julian Edelman or trying to rekindle the career of Antonio Brown, that wide receiver has been a position that the New England Patriots have lacked at. Those two wide receivers are N'Keal Harry, who has yet to live up to the potential that the Patriots have expected him to since they drafted him, and Braxton Berrios, who's no longer even with the New England Patriots. He's now on the New York Jets. So, Casey, I want to start with you here. What do you feel are the next steps? And it might take a little while, granted, but what are the next steps for Belichick and the New England Patriots to get back to where they've been over the last decade and a half?
Well, I think the number one concern for them certainly has to be on the defensive side of the ball. They're one of the worst rush defenses in the league, so they certainly need help up the middle in that regard. But you are right in pointing out that the receiver core, they've never been, not since Randy Moss was there, they've never had the electric number one wide receiver. And that's fine because they play a system game. They played with Edelman and Amendola. Neither one of them was a light 'em up number one, you're putting them up there with Julio Jones and DeAndre Hopkins. No, they were very good receivers. Chris Hogan was another guy. Chris Hogan is a supernatural talent, but he was so pitch perfect in that system because he was 7'11". He's always open. And that's what Tom Brady was able to excel at that Cam Newton just hasn't gotten yet. So I think that the weapons in terms of receiver are not so much the concern as the defensive side of the ball, because the Patriots are a kind of team that will win a lot of 20-17 games, the 14-10 games. They haven't been the light 'em up offense. And I think that they need to get back to that kind of crushing Vince Wilfork up the middle kind of defense when they had Teddy Bruschi in the linebacker core. They have to get back to that kind of identity, I think.
Just after the 7 o'clock hour here on the Primetime Rundown, Ian Schraier, Rob DeLuca, Casey Bryant here with you, entering hour number 2. Rob, I want to get your final thoughts here. What do the Patriots need to do, asking the same question that I asked to Casey, what do the Patriots need to do to get back to where they need to be as we wrap up our football segment?
Look, a lot of that will be solved when the opt-out players come back. So, well, most of it. But, then they got to look into their defense because, there was definitely a period of time where the Patriots defense has just been lacking the past couple of years. It just hasn't been what it used to be. It wasn't the powerhouse defense that most Patriots fans were used to. And of course, now that if they don't keep Cam Newton, obviously figuring that out will be interesting. Maybe you go with your first round pick, you go after Florida's Kyle Trask based on where they're likely going to be in the draft. That's someone who may be available in the first round. Because me personally, I don't think Jarrett. I don't think Stidham's the answer. He just doesn't look like an NFL quarterback to me. I mean, I don't. People thought he was Tom Brady's successor. Oh dear, that's a rough take.
Well, I think for Stidham's case, I think that might be a little bit of an unfair judgment, just because we have not seen him, Rob, get those first team reps yet. And I know that, that the Patriots were ready before they had signed Cam Newton to name Jarrett Stidham their starter. I think Belichick was very much married to the idea of having Jarrett Stidham as the starter for the Patriots. But I think it's going to take a few years for the Patriots to get it back. This isn't going to be a short-term thing. Listen, how many quarterbacks are we going to see in our lifetime that are going to build the resume like Tom Brady? Maybe Patrick Mahomes is going to be next in that list. We'll see. We've got a decade and a half before we can start making the statement that maybe he's the best quarterback to ever play the game. All right, guys, let's move over to baseball here, where the winter meetings have concluded. The horse and pony show, that is, that nothing happens at the winter meetings, continues. Another year where things were very, very ho-hum, very quiet. Didn't see a lot from the Mets, a lot from the Yankees, at least no official signings. We saw a lot of rumors that the Mets were about to lock up James McCann, that George Springer might very well be on his way to being a Met, that the Mets were interested in Liam Hendricks, but nothing to paper for the most part, aside from Adam Eaton signing a contract with the White Sox. We'll get to that in a second. But I remember growing up that the winter meetings were always the destination or the week that you look forward to as a baseball fan, because that was where most of the teams in the offseason did their business, or at least in terms of signing the premier free agents of that class. They would sign them at the winter meetings. And the last few years, I feel like it's just been very, very quiet, very underwhelming. It's been that way for the last few years. And it seems like Mets Twitter is actually, and Casey, I'm going to start with you here, that Mets Twitter is starting to become a little bit impatient, even though I do appreciate Steve Cohen's very vague replies. But with the $14 billion that he wants to invest, I think Met fans were expecting the team to have more than Trevor May and Trevor Hildenberger at this point. That they expected them to come into the winter meetings, albeit they were virtual, and just make some sort of splash, whether that be a McCann, a Real Muto, a Springer, or a Trevor Bauer, whoever that might be. So, Casey, in your opinion, should Mets fans be concerned at this point? I mean, I know I'm not, but should Mets fans be concerned about now with where things stand now that the winter meetings have passed?
No, and Mets fans need to take a chill pill if they're worried, because honestly, I think a lot of it is that people don't want Steve Cohen coming in and overpaying and setting the market when he doesn't have to. At the end of the day, if the White Sox or Angels want to come in with an offer for one of these free agents, they'll set the tone. And then Steve Cohen can say, all right, here you go, here's more. Steve Cohen doesn't have to come in and blow everyone out of the water right away, nor does Sandy Alderson. When you say that the winter meetings have dwindled in activity, it's absolutely true. I'm looking at a tweet here from Cespedes Family Barbecue that was a little bit earlier in today.
Cespedes Family Barbecue.
I love that account. It's so great. And they posted the number of top 50 free agents to sign at the winter meetings over the last decade. And, in 2013, 22 of the top 50 free agents signed during the winter meetings. 2014, 14, 2016, there were 19 of the top 50 free agents signed. And then for whatever reason, 2017, 6, 2018, 8, 2026, 0 of the top 20 free agents signed during the winter meetings. It's wild, the inactivity that is, and that's, baseball is so stagnant and so, I don't want to say, what's a better word other than not fun?
Boring.
Boring. I was going to use the same word. Yeah.
So dull, because NBA free agency is wild. It's all one day. Yep. Everything happens. NHL free agency, 12 o'clock, 20 people have signed. It's great. but
baseball football are not like that, though. They're not.
Baseball boring.
Well, football is a huge roster, so you can kind of forgive it, I guess. But in baseball, there's no excuse. There's like 5 free agents. Just sign those 5, and then no one else will care. The Mets are loading up on pitchers named Trevor, and it's the wrong pitcher named Trevor. The Mets, though, I will say, breaking news as of like 10 minutes ago, the New York Mets did make a huge splash at the winter meetings.
I haven't been following Twitter, so you're breaking this right now on the Primetime.
Breaking news. Jerry Blevins is back in a Met uniform for 2021 on a minor league deal.
If he makes the team, I'm going to be very, very upset. But just because there are too many left-handed specialists out there right now. I mean, maybe for some reason Steve Cohen and Sandy Alderson really like what they've seen the last 12 months out of Jerry Blevins' Twitter account because he's so active about the Mets. But
loading up on online personality.
I got a Mets fan here who's very excited that he's back.
We're gonna bring back Ty Kelly. We're just bringing back all the online personalities.
Maybe he's the Mets' next director of social media. You got me on that one, Rob. It seems like a lot of, and maybe this is unfair to say because before 2020, teams didn't have these economic issues, and yet free agents still weren't being signed at the winter meetings. But how much of it do you think are players like Trevor Bauer, JT Realmuto, the cream of the crop of this year's free agent class, just waiting and waiting for that right contract to come along because they know that these teams are struggling to pay free agents right now, unless you're the Mets?
Yeah, it's tough because, we're in 2020 here and thankfully only for another 3.5 weeks. And it's hard to explain. Look, baseball offseason is boring to begin with. Let's not sugarcoat it. Put 2020 on top of it, we're essentially in hell for in terms of any baseball excitement. And then on top of the economic issues with these baseball teams. A lot of teams lost a lot of money because of that pause. And they don't have the cash to hand out these big contracts. I've lost interest in the winter meetings completely. I completely forgot they were even happening this week because nothing happens there anymore to begin with. So I just think that someone eventually, because it's almost January, eventually someone's just going to have to bite the bullet and be the one to set the market. It's just a matter of who.
Well, it certainly appears that it's going to be the Mets at some point because they are the only franchise right now that doesn't appear to be posting losses on their balance sheet. Whereas the team on the other side of the city right now, the New York Yankees, ownership, and this is as a result of the pandemic, because I don't think in my lifetime I've ever said this about the Yankees, that they are claiming losses as a result of the pandemic, and it's tying up the Yankee budget. I mean, this is horrible what's happening in Major League Baseball. We're seeing minor league teams get axed. We're seeing budget cuts here and there. We're seeing jobs lost. And the one thing I never thought I'd see at any point in my lifetime is to say that the Yankees may actually be on a budget when it comes to spending on free agents. And I know that they're in talks right now with DJ LeMahieu. I know that they've exercised the $13 million option on Zach Britton. So at that point, if they do re-sign LeMahieu, you're talking about, at this point now, $30 million being tied up into 2 players. Right now, and the Yankees and the Steinbrenner family are really hemorrhaging money. And they have a lot of question marks, Rob, in this rotation because Tanaka, J.A. Happ, and James Paxton are all free agents. They're still waiting for Luis Severino to return from Tommy John surgery. Do one of those names at this point, can they bargain hunt a little bit? I mean, I know that's weird because those words are not synonymous, Yankees and bargain hunting. But do we see them get one of those names back on a bargain deal? Do we see them talk to a Corey Kluber? What is realistic, Rob, for the Yankees right now with the budget constraints they're facing?
The realistic shot here for the Yankees is to try to negotiate a cheap deal with Masahiro Tanaka. Tanaka is now 33 years old, I believe. I believe he's 33 now. So he's not getting any younger, but by all means. But he's still got some juice left in the cannon. So he certainly has some value to it. But he's not someone you give a big contract to. He's someone you can bridge. Like, here's 2 more years. Here's like $5 million per year, and and show us that you have something left in the tank, because we're strapped for cash, but we also see the value in having you on this team. But you also haven't been pitching the way your last contract spoke. So he's certainly not entitled to a raise right now. But I think right now Happ is gone. He is definitely aged out and does not belong in a Yankee uniform anymore. I think James Paxton's done here because I don't think James Paxton will come cheap, sadly, because before he got hurt, he was still having a phenomenal year. So I don't see that happening. So I think right now their best shot is Tanaka, or try to pull off some sort of superstar trade. But even that's a little dicey because them superstars are a little costly. So
I do agree with you, Rob. I think Tanaka is reverting to a Happ or a Paxton is right now their best bet. Even a Kluber possibly. I just don't think after that the options there are very strong, like a Rick Porcello or exactly, Casey. A Tyon Walker. I mean, it's not very strong after that group of pitchers, aside from Trevor Bauer. Casey, could they turn to one? And I'm going to ask you the same question. Could they turn to one of those names, or could we see them, because of the budget issues that they are currently dealing with? Could they start the season? In theory, I mean, I know this is unfathomable to believe, but could they start the season with a back end of a rotation like a Davy Garcia, Jordan Montgomery, Domingo Germán? Is that out of the question?
I think that the Yankees are probably just a little gun shy, if only just because they may be wary of seeing how other pitchers do after signing these big money contracts. Like Nathan Eovaldi was really highly sought after a really great final half of the season with the Red Sox the year that they won the World Series. And since then, he's been an average pitcher. Even in 2019, he was objectively bad. James Paxton was really highly touted when he came to the Yankees, and he was fine. J.A. Happ was really highly touted when it came to the Yankees. He's fine. None of these guys, even Patrick Corbin, Yankee fans were tripping over themselves, begging ownership to sign Patrick Corbin at the time. And while Patrick Corbin was great down the stretch and winning a World Series with the Washington Nationals, last year he led the league in hits allowed. And he was not the same pitcher. He was 2-7. To get 7 losses in a 60-game season is impressive. How bad?
Do you remember when and I'm not trying to jump on the Yankees here, but do you remember, or either of you, but do you remember when the Yankees had gotten James Paxton? And it was pretty much coming off I think he was a 15-game winner in Seattle the year before, that they were getting the next ace of their staff even before Garrett Cole was in the discussion?
Yeah, when James Paxton came to the Yankees the year before, he had gone 11-6 with a 3.70 ERA. The year before that, 2.98 ERA. His whip was always at 1.1 or 1.0. He was always a really strong pitcher. And then when he came to the Yankees again, it's not like he was bad when he came to the Yankees in 2019. He was fine. And then last year he made 5 starts, and it's so hard to judge people off of 5 starts. But there were 5 dreadful starts for the Yankees. So when they see these big name pitchers, they probably aren't going to throw huge money at Trevor Bauer. They're probably going to look more for like a tier 2 option, like Jake Odorizzi, like you mentioned Corey Kluber. That's someone that they could go after. They should be wary, though, of trying to collect so many of these names over long-term success. That's what they've been doing with Paxton, with Happ, with their pursuit of Eovaldi. Even if they retain Masahiro Tanaka, it's a cork in the dam. It's not so much a long-term scenario, because they've traded away all their long-term scenarios in the pursuit of winning now. They could still win now. They're built to win now, but they have to also consider that they can't keep bringing in these 35-year-old pitchers and expect to keep winning.
I think there is, for the Yankees at least, I think we're going to see a lot more develop in the next month and a half, because it appears as time has gone on and the winter meetings have become more and more quiet, that we're seeing these free agents sign after the new year with only weeks to go until pitchers and catchers report. And, if we look at our calendar and see we're about to hit middle of December, we're just about 2 months to go until pitchers and catchers are at least supposed to start reporting. Whether or not that's going to be in Florida or at your home stadiums, that remains to be seen. But everything still appears to be on track, on schedule for a 162-game season starting in April. Just about 7:20 here on the Primetime Rundown. I wanted to make sure we got to our 7:18 sports update here. And for our 7:18 sports update, I wanted to give credit where credit's due to the Big Ten Conference for doing right by Ohio State University, who had the game that all college football fans look forward to every year in the regular season. The annual Ohio State-Michigan game was canceled because of COVID cases that arose within the University of Michigan's football program. And the Big Ten Conference did the right thing in terms of removing the 6-game minimum that needed to be played in order to qualify for the conference championship, simply because Ohio State is going to make the college football playoff, and that they have been by far and away the best team in that conference, maybe besides Indiana, at least within their own division, that deserves to play at Lucas Oil Stadium in 2 weeks for that Big Ten championship. And they will play, number 4 Ohio State will play number 14 Northwestern for the Big Ten championship. In front of a limited crowd at Lucas Oil Stadium, the annual site, the home of the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. Ohio State has already opened up as a 20.5-point favorite, quite heavy, but I think to say we all kind of expect Ohio State to win big. Will likely, as I said, be in the college football playoff, whether they win or lose to Northwestern. But kudos to Northwestern because, and I'm not trying to say that to get you ready for the kudos at the end of the show, but kudos to Northwestern, who will actually be playing in their first ever Big Ten Conference Championship game. They actually last won the Big Ten in 1996 as co-champions when there was no conference championship game to decide the champion of the Big Ten, and the co-champion of that year, coincidentally, was Ohio State. So kudos right there to the Big Ten Conference on doing right by Ohio State. Let's wrap up our baseball segment here. The Chicago White Sox were the only team that really made some moves, guys, during the winter meetings, or I should say leading up to the winter meetings. They had traded for another starter, which they so desperately needed in Lance Lynn, also signed and reunited with a former outfielder of theirs that has a World Series ring from Washington in Adam Eaton. Let's talk about Lance Lynn first here, guys. That the lack of their rotation depth, if we remember, was such a huge sticking point, not just in the regular season, but in that best-of-3 wildcard series against the A's. They threw out Lucas Giolito game 1. They won. They lost with Dallas Keuchel on the mound in game 2. And then in game 3, even though they jumped out to an early lead, Chicago did, they ran a bullpen game out there in a decisive game 3 to decide who was going to the American League Division Series. So much needed acquisition for the Chicago White Sox, whose 3 through 5 stars last year were a combined 8 and 7 with a 4.57 ERA. Guys, this is, as I said, an immediate improvement for the Chicago White Sox. What does this acquisition mean in 2021 for the Chicago White Sox and the thin rotation that they have?
I think that ultimately what it indicates is that the White Sox are making that next step to get back into the into contention, consistent contention for the LCS and beyond. They sense the opening that will be there if the Yankees pitching staff isn't going to be up to snuff. If the Astros are going to be losing Springer, there's also rumors that they might be trading Correa. Who knows what they're going to do? And even if they can win without trash cans, which if you're talking about last year, they can't. I don't care if they made the LDS or LCS. They're still, once you get fans back in that building, they're going to suffer. You saw how they suffer last year. And once you get fans back in the building, and I can't wait for fans to get back in that building. It's going to be tough. The American League is going to be wide open. You're going to see teams like Oakland making more chances. You're going to see maybe Minnesota takes the next step. We always think they're going to make
Wait. What are we talking about?
Did you remember did you realize what team you just said?
Yeah, never mind. But you never know who's going to make that next step. The White Sox, what their biggest hurdle was going to be their pitching staff, because Giolito is a stud. Dallas Keuchel had a great bounce back year last year, and they just needed that number 3 viable option so that you're not relying on Dylan Cease or Dane Dunning or every third or fourth day. You need pitching depth in Major League Baseball, and not just any pitcher, guys who can go 5-6 innings. I'm not asking for a lot. 5-6 innings. That's all that modern baseball needs. And getting a guy like Lance Lynn is a great get for Chicago because he's an innings eater. He can win the big game if need be. He was very good last year for Texas, and he's the perfect kind of stopgap. The question will be, will Tony La Russa adapt to the modern era, or will he continue to throw his starting pitchers like longer in games? Because that's kind of, since he's retired, that's been the trend, right? Is pulling your starter a bit early. It's the Kevin Cash school of pulling guys in the fourth inning. And Terry Francona doing that. So that'll be what's the most interesting thing. The White Sox, though, are shaping up to be a strong team in the Central.
Yeah, I'm very excited for the direction that the White Sox are heading. I mean, lest we forget that in entering the final weekend of the regular season, the White Sox were set to win that American League Central. Rob, with respect to the White Sox, I mean, they have to be careful how they allocate their funds a little bit, because eventually they're going to go out there and pay some of these kids that they have right now that really aren't making all that much money right now and are still arbitration eligible. They went out there last offseason and signed Yasmani Grandal to a very lucrative contract. They eventually are going to I don't know if they have yet or not, but they'll have to pay Jose Abreu. Luis Robert was second for Rookie of the Year, so they've got a little while to go on him. But a guy like Eloy Jimenez, you go down the list, they're so young. They're eventually going to have to pay Giolito. So getting a guy right now like Casey, I believe the word Casey used there was stopgap, which I think was a perfect word for a guy like Lance Lynn, someone who's now become a little bit of a journeyman in the league, but knows how to win the big game. How important was it for them to finally find that number 3 starter to plug right into their rotation?
Huge get. Like, look, I'm not saying Lance Lynn's no all-star or anything, MVP type player, but he's certainly a solid player that will get the job done, as Casey said. You know, sometimes people need to change the scene. Like right, he was in Texas, and dear God, Texas, the direction they're headed in. I think you're going to see a lot better performance from Lance Lynn in Chicago, because now he's in a bigger market. Mm-hmm. We're going to see if he can handle the pressure of a bigger market. And honestly, if he can, I think the performance will be even better, because this is very big. This is good for Lance Lynn to prove himself that he's still got some stuff left, that he's still a very reliable pitcher in the major leagues. I think that, and for Chicago themselves, huge. You always need a good 1, 2, 3 punch, and they finally got the third punch. So this is going to be a very, very exciting year for the White Sox fans in Chicago.
Well, Rob, I actually want to go back to a point you had just made when you had said that playing in a bigger market. While you're right that they do play in a baseball market that is really surrounded more by Cubs baseball in Chicago, that the White Sox for the better part of a decade have become a cellar-dwelling franchise of the American League Central. Thankfully for the city of Chicago, or at least the north side of Chicago, that the Cubs have been a World Series contender for the last decade or so. But with respect to the White Sox, Rick Hahn, their general manager, wasn't done after that. He reunited, as I mentioned, with Adam Eaton on a 1-year deal. That's veteran experience that they can plug in right away. He can be a 4th outfielder. I would have loved him as a Met. I would have loved to stop putting Dom Smith and J.D. Davis in left field, and if they end up getting a guy like George Springer, when they can shift Nimmo over to left and use Eaton as that 4th outfielder, maybe they can finally. I know you want to get guys like Dom Smith and Pete and JD all at bats together, but you also have to remember that, and I hate to jump over to the Mets here, but that you're sacrificing defense a little bit for the sake of offense. These guys are not outfielders. But he was initially, if we remember, that Adam Eaton was initially traded in the Lucas Giolito deal from the White Sox to Washington. So it's interesting to see him back, to see him reunited with his old club, and he's kind of jumping right into a team that, as Rob had mentioned, is going to contend right away. I think this is a team now, a White Sox team that's young, that's hungry. I think they still have to shore up some pieces in their bullpen. They still need another starter. It doesn't have to be anything great, but I still think they need a number 4 guy. Like Casey said, I don't think you can get away with a Dane Dunning, a Dylan Cease anymore. They need that they need a guy with like a 3 or a 3.5 ERA back there. When your 3 through 5 starters last year had an ERA of 4.57 ERA and your record was 8-7 in a 60-game season, down the stretch, that's not going to win you a lot of games unless your offense can perform. And thankfully for the White Sox, that appeared to be the case.
It makes you wonder, do they go after someone like a Paxton or a Happ to get there?
Yeah, I absolutely think that's a possibility. I think that if right now, I think you could get J.A. Happ on a friendly deal. I think James Paxton still might demand a little more money, but J.A. Happ is a guy who knows how to win games. And listen, I don't think he's going to be pitching. He'd be pitching to the same type of pressure in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, as he would in New York. So I think that would help them.
Not even close.
Yeah, I think a name that you might even see that I was trying to bring up before that is a former member of the White Sox, Jose Quintana. He never really found his footing with the Cubs. Maybe a change of scenery back to the south side would be what he needs. That's really where he grew his career. So a lot of exciting things coming in 2021 and beyond for the Chicago White Sox. I know I see Joey eagerly awaiting his arrival here into our show. He is here. If you want to actually plug yourself here into the show, we can't hear you yet, sir.
Oh, can you now? Okay. All right. This is fantastic. Casey Bryant, how are you, buddy?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Happy you could join us here, bud.
Thank you, Ian. This is a little backwards here.
Yeah,
this is fantastic.
You know, when we spoke before the show and you told me you wanted me to continue with the hosting duties, I was like, this is going to be really awkward. Like,
I'm still just down here, but my weird from my screen.
Yeah.
But if people are wondering where Joey has actually been, Joey, for the Eastern Observer, that the Primetime is the network that the Primetime Rundown airs on, was covering or I should say covering from home, not covering from the Prudential Center, but covering the St. John's-Seton Hall game. The final score was Seton Hall prevailed 77-68. And we wanted to bring in Joey here. We still wanted to make sure we got Joey on the show tonight for his St. John's analysis. And I'm sure as a St. John's alum and Rob as a St. John's fan himself, we're not thrilled with the start to Big East play, Joey.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. First off, before we get to St. John's, I was listening backstage about the White Sox, and it's really crazy because I saw a stat today that 17 players from the 2019 World Series championship with the Washington Nationals, there's only 17 players left employed and getting signed checks from the Lerner family from 2019. From 2019. Only 17. Next season for the Nationals could be completely different. And what the White Sox are doing, bringing back Adam Eaton, it is so clear. And I know, Ian, you and I had discussed this outside of this show. And I think DeLuca as well. It's so evident that at one point we thought, well, the Washington Nationals won that trade. It is slowly heading back in the opposite direction. If the White Sox can prevail and possibly get a World Series championship of their own, and with both of the players on the roster, they would have won that trade, and then we would eventually figure it out.
I agree with you 100%, Joey. I think the White Sox, and maybe in hindsight when the trade first happened, but remember when the White Sox and Nationals first executed that trade, that was because they knew they were going to lose Bryce Harper in time, and it was let's replace. Or I'm sorry, I think it initially was a Jason Worth that they. Or I'm losing my track of years.
It was originally for the potential departure of Bryce Harper. That was the biggest reason why, because they knew, and Mike Rizzo knew that it was going to be a hell of a lot of money to keep Bryce Harper around. They knew he was going to command at least 10 years. And I don't think they wanted to do that, especially when you have guys like at one point, then Anthony Rendon, which did not happen. Trey Turner is going to be locked up at some point. But then you also have to look, and they had in the pipeline at the time, Victor Robles and Juan Soto coming up. And you just gave out a brand new deal to Steven Strasburg. So it was evident that they needed a cheaper option. And unfortunately, things could not work out with Adam Eaton. And it looks as if that we might be seeing a completely a brand new team, as I alluded to earlier, or a mini rebuild, if you will, in the nation's capital.
Can anyone else like not think of Adam Eaton without thinking of that whole Drake LaRoche controversy? That's the only thing I think of when I think of his name.
Just after 7:30 here on the Primetime Rundown. We're a full crew here now tonight. Ian Schraier, Joey Jarzinka, Rob DeLuca, Casey Bryant here with you for about another half hour or so. Joey, since your entrance to the show is so grand here with about 25, 30 minutes here to go, I got to ask you, do you want to talk St. John's? Because the last thing we do have here on the prompt besides the St. John's Seton Hall recap is talking about the divisional realignment in the National Hockey League, which I know as a friend that hockey is your favorite sport. So I'm going to leave it up to you to decide whether you would like to talk about hockey or a St. John's loss. So I'll leave it up to you.
I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you one thing. Because you are in the host seat, that is actually up to you today.
No, I know, but I'm leaving you the option.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, I got to tell you, I did see, as I was watching both games earlier, I did see Rob DeLuca's T-shirt was all St. John's, and and something else I wanted to bring up too. Our dear friend Rob DeLuca has been diagnosed with COVID-19, so we really do hope that this man does fight it and he beats it, and all of the above. Thankfully, no symptoms there. Really good stuff. So we wish you all the best there. So to continue, obviously with St. John's, as we saw, obviously a horrific start to conference play, but then eventually it got better. And of course, Mike Anderson is known for continuing to bring back to really, if they're down, they continue to press. That is why his defense and his method of play is called 40 minutes of hell. That is what he does. That's what all of the recruits do. That's really what he looks for in all of these players. Posh Alexander being one tonight, he shot 3 for 5 with only 6 points. Mike Anderson was asked the question tonight in the postgame press conference of why he was not shooting more, and he really was trying to deflect it towards Julian Champagnie. And what he did, he's becoming a star within the Big East. Within St. John's, where he scored 24 on 10 of 19 from the field. 3 of 4 from the line. He also grabbed 6 boards, but I think the biggest number there for the budding sophomore superstar, that he had 3 blocks as well. On the opposite side, in that 77-68 loss the 77-68 score in favor of Seton Hall, Sandro Mamukelashvili scored a career-high 32 points. He basically took the game over by himself, all alone, without Bryce Aiken. Still, let's not forget, this team has played 6 games in nearly 11 days. And from what we also heard from Kevin Willard, because of all of the postponements throughout the way, which I've been talking about with you guys in the hashtag Shut It Down group, if you will, the Big East continues to get plagued by the coronavirus. So Xavier, DePaul, UConn, and one more school that and also Butler were all plagued with the disease thus far. So Seton Hall will be playing Marquette sometime, I think, next week. I think on Thursday or Friday, or even Wednesday, I think, in that range. So they were talking about a possible add-in game there with the Big East, and Kevin Willard said no. I got to tell you though, for St. John's, it really was not great. But again, as I said earlier, what they did in the second half, they started down 6. They came out of the locker room with the 6-0 deficit. They were down 35-30. Things did not look good, but then they really, again, they stepped up to the plate, if you will. They had no answer for Julian Champagnie, but then Mamukelashvili, what he did and what he does on a night-to-night basis is simply just put you away. They still do not have, Seton Hall that is, that Miles Powell type player where you have that guy to take that last-second shot. So that is going to be key moving forward for this Seton Hall team. For St. John's, they're very young. They need a lot of work to do. Rasheem Dunn also came back. Kevin Connolly from Fansided, he's been on this show before. He asked Mike Anderson flat out if he was on a minutes restriction. Mike Anderson answered, quote, "We were watching him the entire time," end quote. So he got to play Rasheem Dunn about 16 minutes. And for those that do not know, he was concussed badly in the opener on Thanksgiving Eve against St. Peter's. He didn't even know where he was once he hit the floor, and we were all watching that game. That was definitely a scary sight. So yeah, Ian, it was definitely it wasn't a great game for sure for St. John's, but again, they fought and they never gave up the entire way, where we've seen with Chris Mullins' St. John's Red Storm a few times ago, or in seasons past, where they would drop back and then they would completely just let it explode. But here, Mike Anderson's team, they kept on fighting, they kept on going, and they have Georgetown on Sunday night. And something that I want to conclude with is the pure fact that St. John's against Georgetown is always a trap game, which really it should not be. And because Georgetown is that bad this year, they should not be. If there is any case of St. John's even sniffing a loss, this team is simply not good and will be headed for failure moving forward this year. Again, it is a big asterisk season with 13 minimum NCAA games. But it would show that that St. John's is not what we thought that they were if they were to fall to a lowless Georgetown Hoya team.
Joey, I want to open it up to Rob and Casey as well for questions for you. And we can't thank you enough for your update on the Red Storm, as the Eastern Observer is always following along with the St. John's men's basketball program and the Big East Conference and what goes on with basketball within the Big East. So be sure as well to follow us on Twitter at Observe Eastern, as Joey and the rest of the Eastern Observer family are always tweeting along, live tweeting with every St. John's game. And as Joey had alluded to, is that St. John's has a very quick turnaround to their next game. This was actually a rescheduled game. I wouldn't say rescheduled, a COVID-moved game, so to speak, that they're going to play at Georgetown this Sunday night. So only 2 days to really turn it around. And Joey, you had, and this is my only question in regards to St. John's, is that you had said that Georgetown has always been a trap game, and you've seen the struggles already that the Hoyas are having. How important is it for them? And we see this every year with St. John's, that they just tend to get out to such a struggling start, can never seem to rebound. Even the year a few years ago when they had those wins over Villanova and Duke, they could never seem to turn. It always seems to be too little, too late. How pivotal is it? And they've got 2 games coming up with Georgetown in the span of, a week? So how pivotal is it for them to put out good performances and win both those games against Georgetown?
Oh, there's no doubt about it, because right in the middle, something that was not mentioned, Ian, is that St. John's welcomes Creighton University, the number 8 ranked team in all of the country, on Thursday to Carnesecca Arena. And that really is going to be pivotal, because we have to realize that, again, as I said earlier, 13 minimum games, it's going to be strength of win percentage here. It's not going to be how many games, or, it's going to be an absolute disaster when it comes to the math. You look at the schedule for Georgetown and you see right away how they started off, and they lost a bye game to Navy, 78-71. And I remember me and DeLuca were texting about it, and that was a game that Georgetown should have won. And actually, DeLuca and we called it. And I told him, I said that there was something there. I don't remember exactly what DeLuca sent me, but I said, whatever he sent me, right then and there, I knew Georgetown was going to lose. It was the hex that DeLuca always does, the it's over hex, right?
But I don't do that because it's Georgetown. I would never say that for Georgetown.
That's true. But again, they only beat UMBC by 8 points, which really they should have won by 18 points. Navy, they lost by 7. They lost to West Virginia, which, again, was a fantastic game. They were in the lead at 1 point. Great job against Bob Huggins, who, again, is former Big East family when West Virginia was in the Big East, 80-71. And then against Coppin State, that really doesn't really make a difference, 80-48. We expect those, we expect that to win, or them to win there. But as you brought up, Ian, it is so pivotal to really to win. Because everything right now is all up in the air, and you don't know who that next game is going to be against. And that bye game against, I don't want to call it a bye game, because Georgetown, again, at some point, we have seen it time in and time out where Georgetown upsets St. John's. And it is so bad. It's such a bad look because they always play spoiler against the Red Storm. Even when it was Ewing versus Mullen, and again, against Ewing versus Anderson. It happened last year, obviously in the Big East tournament where it counted. Anderson put his foot down, and they went on a big run, obviously, as we know. They won the first round of the tournament, and unfortunately, we know the rest was history because there was never a result after. But yeah, it is extremely pivotal with Creighton right in the middle, because that, again, I think it's next Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. Sunday, the 20th, is Georgetown heading to Carnesecca Arena, bearing COVID and everything else. St. John's also on Monday, this coming Monday, was supposed to play Butler in Indianapolis. And then they were supposed to play tonight at UConn as the opener, but because of UConn's COVID issues, that's not happening anymore.
Yeah,
so
they're on pause as well. Yep,
it's a disaster.
We do welcome as well any comments for Joey or anyone on our panel of any of the topics we discussed tonight. Joey, always welcome to answering any of your questions with regards to the Red Storm. And we thank Joey again for his report after their loss tonight to local rival Seton Hall. Gentlemen, let's wrap this up here tonight with a little hockey talk, as the announcement has come down that, or we should say that the anticipated start date of the NHL season, that the puck will drop on or around January 13th. We expected that there was going to be some sort of shuffling with respect to the divisions within the National Hockey League, a 56-game NHL regular season schedule, and much so to the fact that the NHL is obliged to tell us that we already know that Canada has said we will close our borders. As of right now, there will be no international travel, so there will be a division just strictly for the 7 teams that play north of the border. But at least for the Metropolitan Division, where our fandom hails from, I should say, for the 4 of us on this podcast, is that the 5 of the 7 Metropolitan Division teams will remain intact. The only difference is that in regards for limited travel, that 5 of the 7 teams, 2 of them will include Boston and Buffalo. The USA 2 division, as it right now, as it's being called, because they don't have any official names, and thank you to Sportsnet for in Canada for this graphic, that the USA 2 division is set to be the most piecemeal division of the 4, because what we're doing now is we're combining pieces of the Atlantic division that play in the Southwest, and then pieces of the Central division that play in the Midwest. So as a result, we have Carolina, Chicago, Columbus, Detroit, Florida, Minnesota, Nashville, and Tampa. So a bit of a mix, I should say, of in terms of trying to limit travel. I'm not so sure how much that really does for the USA 2 division, with the Pacific division encompassing the 4th and final division. So, Casey, I'm going to start with you here. I want to get your initial thoughts when you saw this announcement. What were your initial thoughts about the realignment?
Well, selfishly, as you said, our fandom lies mostly in the Metropolitan Division, so I couldn't help but think, what a brutal division that is. I mean, it's tough. I mean, granted, you're subbing out Columbus and Carolina, who are 2 strong contenders for the playoffs. I mean, Columbus made a good push last year despite losing Panarin, Duchesne, and Bobrovsky, and the Carolina Hurricanes are proving to be one of the strongest contenders in the Eastern Conference, let alone their division. But bringing the Boston Bruins is so tough. That's already such a stacked division. You have Buffalo, who maybe could be good. They did bring in Taylor Hall, so like it's not like they're a complete slouch, but they are not. They're probably going to be fighting for the basement with the New Jersey Devils at that point. And then you have kind of the D tier of the Rangers, and maybe the Penguins fall down to that part of the tier. But then there's the top 3-4 seeds are pretty much set in stone, right? No one questions that the Bruins are going to miss the playoffs. No one questions that the Islanders are going to be up top and stuff like that. What's going to be really interesting is the Canadian division, because the Canadian teams are such unpredictable wild cards in each of their own respective divisions, right? The Winnipeg Jets, you never know how they're going to finish because they're, again, some weeks where they look unbeatable, some weeks where Connor Hellebuck couldn't stop a beach ball. And who knows if Patrick Laine is going to stay? Who knows what's going on with Mark Scheifele, if he's going to be on the move? Paul Stastny is back in Canada. Montreal, who knows if they're going to be any good? You know, they ride Carey Price for 2 weeks, but then their offense can't score a goal for a month. And there's going to be so much more travel in the Canada division than any other division. You're going to have to travel from Edmonton all the way to Montreal and like
Vancouver to Toronto.
Yeah, it's going to be. I get it. You can't cross the border. I understand. But I find it so funny that the USA divisions are so micromanaged, trying to limit who's going where, trying to keep all the teams close together. Canada's just like, screw it, we're going wherever. We're going to play up in Manitoba. We're going to play in Alberta. It's going to be great.
I guess these franchises don't really care too much about their playing bills in the end. But Joey, let's get the Islander fans' view, so to speak, with regards to your thoughts about the realignment as a whole, and more specifically the Metropolitan Division.
It's something that Casey brought up earlier, about Boston coming into this, what do we want to call it? USA 1 division, if you will, or USA.
That's what it's being called right now.
Yeah. So USA 1 division. So looking at the graphic again, it's basically Boston, Buffalo, New Jersey, the Rangers, the Islanders, the Penguins, the Caps, and the Flyers. Something that was brought up originally was that there was some talk where Pittsburgh would be in that Division 2 and Carolina would be in this Division 1. And I got to tell you, I am actually stoked that Pittsburgh is in this division as opposed to Carolina. And I think all Rangers, Islanders, Flyers, even Bruins fans are all relieved to not have Carolina in the division. With the Islanders, though, again, it's whatever, because a majority of these teams were already in the Metro. They're going to have to play all these guys anyway. The only difference is that now they're going to be seeing Buffalo and Boston a few more times. And that will definitely take a toll on, like I said, I personally believe Boston's going to come out on top, but again, who knows? That's just what's on paper. For the Islanders, though, just them specifically, we'll see, because we don't know the deal in terms of Matthew Barzal yet. The Islanders just made a mini trade with Detroit. Dimitri, I can't even pronounce his last name, but it's Dimitri Timashov. I think that's what it is. Dimitri Timashov. To all the Butch Goring fans out there, I definitely, when he always butchers it, no pun intended. Timashov, Dimitro Timashov. Acquired his rights. So they don't even know if they're going to sign him, but we'll see what happens. You figure, because it's January 13th is the proposed start date, roughly 32 days until the season starts. I'm a little nervous, I got to tell you, because of everything with not only with COVID, but I think it's going to be something similar to football, where you're going to have injuries that are going to pop up. And I remember I said this on this show as well, that the injuries are going to be paramount in terms of where teams finish. And I really believe it's going to happen. And some teams are going to be plagued hard with it.
DeLuca, your final thoughts so far on the, or I wouldn't say so far, but your final thoughts on what you've seen from the grand scheme, from the realignment, and within this stacked USA 1 division, or whatever you want to call it. How do you see the Devils? And granted, they were towards the bottom of the Metro division last year, but where do you see them stacking up?
This isn't going to go well. This is going to go poorly for the Devils. The goal this year, regardless if there was a pandemic or not, the goal for this season was just to be competitive. We have no playoff aspirations whatsoever. We just want to be competitive at this point. We want to not be completely embarrassed by this division, which is now insanely difficult. It was hard enough last season. It was hard enough the season before. It has to be, they have to now get competitive in what is probably a much more difficult division. But like Casey said, Boston's going to the playoffs. Washington's going to the playoffs. Philly's probably going to the playoffs. Islanders probably round that out if we're being serious. But yeah, and then you look at USA 2. I mean, there's Carolina and there's Tampa. Then there's about a 20-foot drop, and then there's the rest of that division. Then you look at USA 3 out west. To tell me the four playoff teams aren't obvious, it's St. Louis, Vegas, Dallas, and Colorado, because the 3 California teams are all in rebuilds. Arizona's laughable at this point. There's a lot of predictability in the USA divisions. Except in USA 2, where 3 and 4, the bottom 6 are pretty much just going to beat the crap out of each other until someone sneaks in those last 2 spots.
I want to add my 2 cents in there, Ian, if you don't mind. Because,
sure.
You look at, I want to go back to DeLuca's point here with USA 2 division. And this Carolina, Chicago, Columbus, Florida, Minnesota, Nashville, and Tampa. Okay, all of those teams, fellas, they all made the return to play. Excuse me, not Minnesota. But
I just saw Casey's reaction. But
they all, yeah. But
2014.
Listen, the reason why I bring that up is because that division, I personally believe, will be the best one in all 4 of these. You have to look at these teams here and you say to yourself, listen, Columbus and Chicago, in my opinion, just my personal opinion, they're not going to be a walk in the park. Those teams are up and coming. Chicago is on its way back. Whether we like it or not, even though with those 2 $10 million contracts in Taves and Kane, let's not forget, Alex DeBrincat is back as well. Dominic Kubalik is also back as well. I mean, again, these guys have really done a solid job. And Bowman out there, general manager Stan Bowman out there, has done a really good job in terms of, reshuffling the deck, if you will. He's done a fantastic job. And they also, let's not forget, they also beat Edmonton in 5 in the return to play. Listen, this team, this division is really, really good, and I would be frightened to play in that division.
Casey, I know you're waiting to say a few words, so please.
Can we get that graphic back up again real quick? Because look, you are right that Chicago is building something. It's not there yet. They don't have anyone that is going to frighten you standing in between the pipes. That's number one. Corey Crawford is gone. Corey Crawford hasn't been good in years, but that's irrelevant.
Please, Casey, please don't tell Devils fans that. They won't be able to handle it.
Florida, that's fine. That's why the Devils are a joke too, but that's a side.
Wait, that's why?
Let me get to my point. Bring the division back up. Florida is a complete dumpster fire right now. They just cleaned out the entire house. They lost Mike Hoffman, who was one of their best players. They are never the sum of their parts. They're always consistently the most disappointing team. Jonathan Huberdeau is never living up to expectations. Minnesota, no, get out of here. When your best player is Matt Zuccarello, you have a problem. You're not constructed well. You can put it back down again.
Casey clearly misses Zuccarello.
Look, I love Matt Zuccarello. I think he's a very good player. When he's your best player, I don't understand what Minnesota is doing exactly. They traded away like Zucker. They're trading away Nino Niederreiter. They're getting rid of a lot of their skilled guys, and they just traded away Eric Stahl too. For who? For Marcus Johansson.
1-for-1
for Marcus Johansson. What? And then like I understand. So from a competitive balance standpoint, yeah, that'll be one of the better divisions, but you can't tell me it's better than USA 1 in terms of actual quality of hockey. Any division with the Detroit Red Wings in it is not the best division.
10 years ago, who thought you'd be saying that?
Guys, I want to get to one last piece here with the hockey segment, and it came out on the Eastern Observer today, and I think it'd be a shame if we didn't mention that we were not going to get to all of them. I just want to focus on really the Metropolitan Division +2 that Tyler Riddell came out with his predictions, or his early 2020-2021 predictions for what he expects to see excuse me, out of that division this year. And he listed the Bruins as a 1 seed, the Islanders as a 2. I do not have a picture of it, so just bear with me as I'm reading this off. The Rangers as the 3 seed, the Capitals as a wild card. Somehow he put the Hurricanes in there. I don't know how that's possible considering they don't play in the same division. But the Sabres, the Flyers, the Devils, and I'm assuming instead of the Carolina Hurricanes, that would mean the Pittsburgh Penguins are also eliminated. So, gentlemen, I want to pass it around to my panel here. Your thoughts on those predictions from Tyler for the USA D1?
I'd say it's reasonable. You know, nothing crazy about that. I do think Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's done. I think their reign of terror is finally over after 15 long years of seeing Pittsburgh success. It's finally over.
Casey,
could you run down the standings for me one more time?
Sure, absolutely. And again, I apologize to our viewers that we don't have a visual of it, but the Bruins as a 1 seed, Isles 2, Rangers 3, with the Caps as a wild card, followed by the eliminated teams of the Penguins, Sabres, Flyers, and Devils. I mean, is that even fair so much to Philly, considering how they were playing towards the end of last season?
I think that's a complete disservice to what the Philadelphia Flyers were able to accomplish. Don't get me wrong. The Philadelphia Flyers are the anti-Florida Panthers, where they are so much more than the sum of their parts. You know, they're able to get so much out of guys that I wouldn't qualify as elite, but they're all together, they gel so well. Case in point, Kevin Hayes is thriving in the Philadelphia system. He's not producing any more than he was in a Ranger uniform. But
with Alain Vigneault as the head coach.
Right, exactly. It's the same basic principle, but it's the fact that his supporting cast is contributing a lot more than it did when he was utilized in New York. And as a result, you've got Sean Couturier, who is, again, I wouldn't qualify as elite, but a very, very good complementary player alongside Voracek and Giroux and guys at top. So I think that Philadelphia, especially now that they have a real number 1 goalie in Carter Hart, as opposed to years of experimenting with Brizgalov and Leighton and whoever, Brian Elliott and Cam Talbot and whoever else they wanted to trot out in between the pipes, I think that they're still one of the top dogs in the division. I don't think the Rangers are a playoff team yet. I get that everyone is riding the excitement of Alexis Lafreniere, but let's temper the expectations a little bit. Capo Caco was a 20-point player last year after being number 2 overall pick. Jacob Trouba was really highly touted, didn't produce very much. We still got to pump the brakes a little bit. We still have to see if Chris Kreider is going to be the same player he was before he broke his foot. They lost Jesper Fast and added Jack Johnson. I mean, you talk about getting worse. Subtraction by addition there. I mean, that's just goodness gracious. So I think that there's still a lot more room for growth there. I think that's a slap in the face to Philly.
And Casey, I do appreciate you touching on the Rangers, because I know when I had asked you your initial thoughts about the realignment, we didn't get a chance to talk about the Rangers. Joey, from your viewpoint as an Islanders fan, and we know Tyler's commitment is to the Islanders as well, but do you see the Islanders right where he put them, and do you agree with how he laid out where he sees those teams finishing at the end of this year?
No, I don't. I really don't. I hate to say it. And, you know, the way, just by looking at what he did here, he has Bruins 1, Islanders 2, Rangers 3, Caps wild card. And as you brought up earlier about Carolina, I do believe that would be Pittsburgh.
Yes, correct.
In that area. I agree with Casey there 100%, because Philadelphia in that spot, I don't think that they're a flash in the pan team. I do believe that this team is really on the rise. I think that, as Casey brought up about the goaltender experiment, It is continuously going up, and they now have that reputation of, okay, well, they messed up with Brizgalov, they messed up with Leighton, they also traded away Bobrovsky many years ago as well. So maybe they can finally get it right, like maybe take 5, take 6 with Carter Hart. Could they get it done? I remember when also Brian Elliott they thought was a big piece at one point, and then he regressed real quick. No, I think that the Islanders are not a 2 seed. I also believe, and again, this is not out of Islanders fandom. This is out of, I think, knowledge and common sense. The Rangers are not there yet. They're not, and we saw it against Carolina. Again, Lafreniere, and as Casey brought up, to subtraction by addition with Jack Johnson. That's bad. And Pittsburgh, as DeLuca brought up earlier. Pittsburgh, I do believe that their time is done. Their time to shine has officially come to a close. You look at some of the guys that they got here. Michael Matheson also, they traded 1-for-1 with Patrick Hornquist. And that experiment down in Florida on the blue line was an absolute disaster. And guess what? They now have absorbed 6 years of Michael Matheson as opposed to 2 more years of Patrick Hornquist at about, I don't know, a few $1 million less. But you now have him for the next however many years. So you also have Cody Ceci, who was an absolute disaster. Pittsburgh, I think that, like I said, I think that what we saw in Tyler's thing, and I'll definitely let him know that we brought this up. The bias came out just a little bit there with the Islanders for sure.
And to our viewers, if you like what you're seeing, we hope you will join us just after the new year, as we plan to have our NHL preview show, where we hope to have the 4 of us back to talk a couple hours of hockey and bring in a couple of special guests.
Oh, way to spoil the surprise, Ian.
Well, I can't say that maybe our fans here on the Eastern Observer and the Primetime Rundown can't see it coming, considering we also do a show on the Free Agent Frenzy. But we do hope that you will join us after the new year when we break down more of what's going on in the hockey universe. And I would love to get to more of what Tyler Riddell's predictions are, but as we are just after 8 o'clock here, we do need to start wrapping it up a little bit. And that being said, I want to start with you, Joey, to give your kudos. Even though you only joined us for the last half hour, we want to make sure that you get your kudos in. So please, by all means, give us your kudos for this week.
Yeah, my kudos, I don't want it to be basketball-centric, but it's going to be. Sandro Mamukelashvili, he completely took Seton Hall and put him on his back and really has done a phenomenal job this week as well. On Sunday against Penn State as well. They came back from almost a 20-point deficit, came back and won. Really, really good job there. And also, again, against St. John's, 77-68. Another fantastic job there. So again, really, really. Oh, and also let's not forget 32 points. 32 points. That is a career high. 12 of 18 from the field, and also 5 for 8 from the charity stripe. Really amazing stuff. Kudos to Georgian native Sandro Mamukelashvili.
A lot. Didn't seem like there was going to be a lot to look forward to about Seton Hall, but they're going to make things interesting in that Big East. That appears to be playing a little weak right now, and maybe it's Creighton this year that comes out on top, but we'll see. Rob, your kudos.
Yeah, I gotta go back to football here. I gotta give credit where credit is due, and that's why my kudos is going to Colt McCoy of the New York Giants. You know, he was given a tall look. This man does not start in the NFL anymore. This man has been in the league for 10 years now. In 10 years, that's 106. 10 years, that's 160 games. He has appeared in under 40. So it's just been a rocky road for Colt McCoy. But Daniel Jones goes down. He's told to come in to Seattle and, hand the ball off, do what you got, do what you can out there. And let me tell you something. For someone who only had 105 yards, he still threw a touchdown. And you know what? Just way to lead the offense. Way to go out there as a veteran, lead this offense for enough. Because, look, it was a very heavily defensive-relied game. But way to lead the offense to score enough to get you over the edge and get that victory. Put the Giants in a very good place.
And Rob, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you and Joey and Casey, to you as well. My little personal fact with Colt McCoy was I was actually at the NFL draft the night that Colt McCoy got drafted by the Cleveland Browns in 2010. When I look back on the draft year that was, I was actually at the same draft that Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez also got drafted. So looking back, I actually was there the year of the tight ends, I guess so we could say. Casey, your kudos.
I have to give my kudos in part to two different parties here. Number one, kudos goes to the NBA for starting up tonight. The preseason action is back in action, and as much as I was thinking, 2020 can't get worse, but oh look, there's the Knicks right there. But I will say kudos to Obadiah Toppin, who already in this preseason matchup against the Detroit Pistons, 4 minutes, 9 points, leading scorer. He's 8'3". He's never lost. He's the savior of the franchise. He's better than Ewing. He's better than Olajuwon. He's better than Clyde Frazier ever was. Knicks are 82-0. NBA is back. I will overreact to 4 minutes of basketball. Let's go.
Casey, do yourself a favor. Please stop.
I will never stop. I will never. Nerlens Noel and Julius Randle, Obadiah Toppin. I mean, this is what the Sixers wish they had when they had Embiid and Noel and Okafor. This is
Casey, let me just say this. When we get to July and those three names you just mentioned have anything to do with equaling up to a championship, I'd be glad to buy you as many drinks as you'd like.
I'll be honest. I'll be 100% serious with you. I'll be 100% true and honest and reflective. I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers fold as a franchise when they.
To be honest, I thought he was going to say Super Bowl.
I really think that when LeBron sees Obi Toppin play, he would put down his uniform and say, "There's nothing left for me to accomplish here. I am but a mere mortal, and I have to give my respect to the deities, to the gods." And as such,
Casey, I was going to tell you, please stop before we get Joey on a LeBron rant. We don't have enough time left in the show for that.
I'll cut it off there.
Favorite player.
So while we appreciate Casey's 5 minutes of kudos to a franchise that hasn't made the playoffs, maybe in my lifetime. No, I'm just kidding. But my kudos actually go, and I don't, you would never really hear me say this, but my kudos actually go to the New York Yankees and more specifically the Hudson Valley Renegades. I'm sure Casey's very happy to see me putting that up. Even though he is a Met fan, but the Renegades, the former short season single A affiliate of Tampa Bay Rays, now the high A affiliate of the Yankees, expected to stay in the same high A league now as the Cyclones, among other former New York Penley teams. But what I love so much about this is how they are paying homage to the Staten Island Yankees with a very similar branding concept. The Renegades, or I should say Hudson Valley, is keeping the same font. But the interlocking HV reminds me so much of the interlocking SI from their time in Staten Island, sticking with the baby bomber-like jerseys with the pinstripes and the gray jerseys, with them only being, an hour or so drive from the Bronx. So this is just a fantastic job. And I mentioned it on Twitter as well, a fantastic job by the Yankees on really paying tribute to their roots with the Staten Island Yankees. Gentlemen, that'll about do it for us here tonight here on episode number 44 of the Primetime Rundown. I wanted to leave it up to the three of you to see if any of you had any closing remarks as we head into another weekend of football. Really? That quiet, huh?
Well, hold on. You know what? Actually, it's very funny because, you know what? I have to give sort of kudos or a closing statement to Kyrie Irving. I have to tell you, he is a legend in my eyes. He's a fantastic guy. Casey, would you like to go on about Kyrie Irving? Are we pawns? Is that what it is?
I've never heard of him.
So I think, he doesn't answer to pawns or anything along those lines. So I say keep doing you, Kyrie Irving, and keep being a distraction in the league, and don't forget the Earth is flat as well.
Yeah, that makes me feel so much better as a Nets fan. Wow,
I really couldn't believe when I heard him come out with that. But that's for another show. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening. But before we go, we wanted to let you all know what is coming up here on the Eastern Observer. we continue our partnership with the New York Professional Scouts Association as Joey showcases former Philadelphia Phillies, New York Yankees, and San Francisco Giants Major League Scout Joe DiCarlo. Joe is the scout whose marquee signing was former Florida Marlins and New York Mets at one point, starting pitcher and a two-time World Series champion, Al Leiter. That will come to you tomorrow morning right here on the Eastern Observer at 11 a.m. And then start your morning with our newest show, the Daily Wrestling News Show with our very own Ryan Joy, every Monday through Thursday, starting at 10 a.m. Right here again on the Eastern Observer. And then this Monday begins the final week of the Primetime Rundown interview series before the holiday break, and we will be back after the new year, but before the holiday break, when I continue to spotlight those in the athletic communications industry, we will have Wagner College's Director of Media Relations, Brian Morales, here with us this Monday, December 14th at 8 p.m. You will want to tune into that, but you will also want to tune in 2 days later when Ken Daniels, the television play-by-play broadcaster for the Detroit Red Wings, is here with Joey as he wraps up the first 48 episodes of the interview series with one of the NHL's best in the booth. Ken Daniels of the Detroit Red Wings will be here to share his emotional story on December 16th, this Wednesday at 8 o'clock on the Eastern Observer. And that lastly will be sandwiched by, as we know on Tuesday nights, the Essential Wrestling Podcast comes back to you as Al Carl, John Smith, Ryan Joy, John DeConti, and Gary Mahaffey return for another week of updates and highlights in the world of wrestling, with coverage beginning at 6 p.m. And finally, Joey, Rob, and I will be back with episode number 45 of the Primetime Rundown next Friday, December 18th at 6 o'clock, as we hope to have a little more news to report to you all on what's happening in the MLB hot stove. And all programming can also be seen on the I-95 Sports Network and Zingo Television Channel 198. It has been my pleasure tonight to be in the host chair for Joey, and thank you, Joey, so much for allowing me to be in the host chair this evening. For my co-host, Joey Jarzinka, Rob DeLuca, our special guest, Casey Bryant, always a laugh. Can thank you so much. I'm Ian Schraier, and we'll see you next time.